Hello everyone, welcome to the answer writing program. In this December month, we will be covering or discussing the questions from GS1, that is History, Society and Geography. Today's topic is Art and Culture, and we will be discussing 3 questions. 2 questions from Art and Culture topic and 1 question from Current Affair. Let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. The very first question is related to Art and Culture syllabus, and it is about the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism. The second question is related to town planning in Harappan civilization, and the third question, which is related to current affair, it's about Indian Himalayan region and its vulnerabilities and the challenges with respect to unregulated or uncontrolled tourism in this Indian Himalayan region. So let's start with the very first question. The first question says, though the factors for the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism were somewhat similar, yet their basic tenets were quite different, and we need to analyze it. So the question is saying that the factors behind the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism were similar, but there were differences in their philosophies, in their tenets, in their core beliefs. And the keyword is analyze. Analyze means we need to dig deep into this. We need to write in detail. It means we do need to in-depth analysis and in-depth explanation with respect to the causes, the factors, and what are the different tenets. So let's start with the introduction. In introduction, you can write about the background, the origin or the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism. So you can write about its origin, that these both the religions were originated approximately in the contemporary at the same times, and they were originated in the later Vedic age, later Vedic period, that is 6th century BC in Magad, which today is known as Bihar. And these Jainism and Buddhism were religious reform movements. You can also talk about the founders of these religion, that is Gautam Buddha or Gautam Siddhartha was the founder of Buddhism, and Rishabh Dev Ji was the real founder of Jainism, but Jain Mahavir was the real propagator. So he is known as the real founder also. So these way you can talk about the introduction. Let's see the body part. The common factors leading to the emergence of Jainism and Buddhism, these religious reform movements. So the very first point is the environment or the surrounding that was prevailing at that time, like the social and the religious context at that time. The very first thing is the rigid caste system. The caste system was so ingrained at that time that it dominated all the spheres of the life. So the individuals do not have a space to mobilize themselves, to socially mobility, to do the social mobility. So Buddhism and Jainism offered an alternative way to the spiritual journey that does not depend upon the caste. The next is dominance of Brahmanism. The dominance of the Brahmanical culture, the authorities of the Vedas. So they were very complex in nature. There were the sacrifices, indiscriminate sacrifices. There were the rituals or the traditions or the customs that were very complex in nature, that confused the people. They were also expensive in nature. So this Jainism and Buddhism offered the alternative path that do not make some authorities of the Veda, or they promotes direct or the personal path to attain or to go on the spiritual journey. That depends upon the meditation, that depends upon the non-violence, and that depends upon the simple way of life. not by performing the explicitly these Brahmanical or the Vedic culture, traditions or the norms. There were indiscriminate sacrifices of animals, and due to the emergence of the agriculture, they require animals for the livestock, for the cattle farming. So, but these animals got sacrificed in the Vedic traditions. So, people were finding new religion for that. Next comes the economic factors. There was a increase or growth in trade going on, and the Vaishyas were dominant in that. So they want to enhance their social status. But money lending was looked down upon in the Vedic culture. So again, the Vaishyas need some alternative path. Next is materialistic life, and there was a confusion in the new way of living. People were again inclined towards the simple or the early way of life. And also, these Vedic traditions were very complex in nature. There was a Sanskrit in that. So, these Jainism and Buddhism promoted the vernacular language like the Pali and Prakrit or the Magdi language. So, they focused to understand in the vernacular language so that all the traditions, all the norms can be understandable or understood by the local people or the common men. Next is we need to write the differences in the basic tenets of Jainism and Buddhism. That although there were the similarity in the factors of the emergence that Jainism and Buddhism got emerged, but their philosophies, their core beliefs, their learnings or the teachings were different. So, the very first thing is the essence of teaching. What Buddhism says that life is suffering, and to escape the suffering, it means we need to end the cause of desire, and for that we need to dispel the ignorance. It means we need to attain the knowledge. So, how we can attain the knowledge? By realizing the Four Noble Truths and practicing the Eightfold Path, that is Ashtangik Marg. What Jainism says? Jainism's way of teaching or the essence of teaching is about we need to respect all living beings, and we can attain the liberation from the cycle of rebirth by taking the 5 vows and following the principles of 3 jewels, that is right faith, right knowledge and right action. So this is how the differences are there. Next is about the difference in the concept of God. Buddhism do not believe in the concept of God or deity. But Buddhism says that although there are some supernatural figures who can help or hinder the people on the path of their enlightenment process. Jainism believes in God, not as a creator, that God creates this earth, but as a perfect being. What does this perfect being means? When the person destroys all his karmas, it means now he is a liberated soul. He lives in the perfect blissful state, in the moksha state, moksha forever. So that living soul or that the perfect being possesses the infinite knowledge, infinite vision, infinite power and infinite bliss. That liberated soul or that living being is known as God of the Jain religion. Next is about the middle path or the extreme austerity. So now Buddhism avoids the extremes of both indulgence and severe asceticism or the austerity. Buddhism believed in the balanced approach, that is the middle path. Jainism, although initially Jainism promoted extreme austerity, but later on realizing the need for the more moderate path. So Jainism still places a strong emphasis on the ascetic practices or the austerity practices, even in the dietary habits. Then what about the concept of ahimsa and how they got differ in both the religion? Buddhism promotes non-violence and compassion, although the interpretation is more flexible. The monks are allowed to eat meat in their meals. In Jainism, they promote the stricter adherence towards this non-ahimsa concept, and this condemns all forms of violence, even to the smallest living being. In Jain, monks and the nuns follow the strict vegetarian diet. Next is about the concept of sin. there is no concept of sin in Buddhism, and there is a concept of sin in Jainism which says that we should not do harm to the others. It means the sin is harm to the others. And what about the concept of soul? Buddhism did not believe in the concept of soul, and Jainism believes that every living and non-living has a soul. So these are some tenets that how Jainism and Buddhism got differs. Finally, conclusion or the summary, what we can write in the summary, that although they emerged in the similar time, similar historical and the societal backgrounds or the context, but their fundamental tenets or the philosophies were different or they diverged significantly. They took the distinct path in their terms of their core beliefs and the principles. So this is how you can conclude your answer. Let's see the model answer. Starting with the background or the times when the Buddhism and Jainism got emerged, then factors which led to the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism, then the similarities. By making a table, on the left side you are writing the tenets, in that more about the teachings and about the concepts what Buddhism and Jainism got differs in. Finally, conclusion. Now let's move on to the second question. The second question says that the town planning in Harappan civilization shows the high level of sophistication. In this slide, discuss the significant features of Harappan town planning. Also, mention the various theories in relation to the decline of the civilization. So this is demand 1. We need to write down the significant features of the Harappan town planning and the various theories that leads to that tells about how the civilization got declined. So this is the demand 2. So in introduction, you can write about some background or some abouts or the facts about the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization. You can write that the Harappan civilization, also known as the Indus Valley civilization, it stands as a testament to the remarkable achievements of one of the most world's oldest urban centers or the town planning. It flourished around 2500 BC in the western part of southern Asia, and it was distinguished by its system of the advanced town planning. So you can write about some facts in introduction. Then directly come to the main body part or the demand, that what are the significant features of the Harappan town planning. So the very first feature of the sophisticated town planning was the citadels and the lower towns. So the whole city was divided into the lower towns, that is the lower citadel, and the elevated platform, that is a mound-like structure, which is known as the upper citadel. So there were some governmental buildings, maybe some religious center in the upper citadel, and in the lower citadels there were mainly the common man quarters type structure would be there, or there were the places or the mud or the brick houses for the common man. So the next is about the grid layout. The whole city was planned very beautifully in a grid pattern shape. All the streets are getting connected or interlinked to each other. The streets were of the same width, well planned, well laid. There were the street lightning on the streets. So the whole city was perfectly planned via the grid layout. This is one of the most remarkable feature of this Harappan town planning. Next is, there was the advanced and efficient drainage system. All the houses have the bathrooms and the toilets which were connected to the main network of the drains outside their houses as well. And they were connected like this. The houses has the drains, toilets and bathrooms, and these toilets and bathrooms connected to the city's network of drains. And these drains also got covered from the stone slabs. So this shows the very high level or the sophisticated level of the urban town planning. Next is well-planned streets and buildings. There were the wide streets, there were proper uniform streets were there. And in the construction of building, they used standardized brick for the construction of buildings. Next is brick construction and great path. There were the bricks which is of the standardized size. And there were a great bath. Great bath means they take proper measures for the hygiene, sanitation or the health. Also, they have the wells for the reliable supply of water. There were the great granaries also for the emergency times. So you can write other features as well, that there were dedicated places to throw the waste material also, and there were proper street lighting system. So you can write other features as well. Next, demand, that is demand 2. It's about the theories about the decline of Harappan civilization. So the very first theory which says that there were the massive floods in the Indus Valley in that civilization that results or that leads to the erosion or the decline of the Harappan civilization. Next is, as it lies in the high seismic zone, maybe due to high seismicity, it leads to the erosion or the decline of the Harappan civilization. Next is some environmental factors. Some says that there was decline in the water. There was a water scarcity in the Saraswati river, which leads to the decline in the agricultural productivity, which leads to the mass exodus or the migration to some other places of this Harappan people. Next is, there was some outbreak of epidemic of plague, which leads to the decline of Harappan culture. Next is, some scholars says that there was the Aryan invasion. So people got migrated, or due to some conflicts in that, this civilization got declined. Finally, conclusion. So you can write about summary that the decline may be due to some of the complexities of the factors. There can be the multiple factors in the decline. So there is like scholarly debate going on. What is the exact reason behind this? There are some archaeological surveys going on for the exact reason, to understand the exact reason behind the decline of this Harappan civilization. So the model answer, it's about background, then significant feature, and the model answer is dividing in the two different part about the significant features of the Harappan town planning and the significant features that shows the high level of sophistication. So you can merge these 2 points as well. Then finally, the reasons behind their decline, and finally the conclusion that there are some multiple complex factors which may be varied from region to region within that civilization only. Next, come to the third question. Indian Himalayan region has its own vulnerabilities. In this context, explain the challenges of unregulated tourism in Indian Himalayan region. So, the question is about Indian Himalayan region, its vulnerabilities and the challenges that posed by unregulated or uncontrolled tourism on Indian Himalayan region. So the question is only asking about the unregulated or uncontrolled migration or tourism in the Indian Himalayan region. So this would be the main demand. And what the question is setting the context, like that Himalayan region has its own vulnerabilities. So you can write in introduction, or after some introduction, you can make some chart, hub-spoke model telling about its vulnerability and shows the different aspects of vulnerability. So let's start with the introduction. What you can write in intro? In intro, you can set the context that the recent landslides in Himachal Pradesh and the breach or the collapse or the failure of Tehri Dam. So this shows the environmental, or this tells us about the reminder that the ecological impacts due to the economic or the infrastructural or the developmental aspects of the human being. So you can write about recent incidents. You can also write about what exactly Indian Himalayan region is. It's about 11 states and 2 UTs. So this Indian Himalayan region covers approximately 13 states and UTs. Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are the 2 UTs, then Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, West Bengal and 7 northeastern states. And you can make some diagram, some map also which shows the vulnerability or which represents the IHR region. After introduction, you can make a small diagram like this, which shows about the IHR vulnerabilities. You can divide IHR vulnerabilities into multiple factors like the environmental, geopolitical, cultural and socio-economic. Further, you can divide environmental factors like what are the vulnerabilities, environmental vulnerabilities in this IHR. So due to climate change poses huge vulnerabilities in this region. Like due to climate change, glaciers are retreating, and this decides the downstream water availability. It means they are responsible for floods also and droughts also. It means for the proper management or for the water resources management, then human will make dams to fulfill their power needs, to fulfill their water needs. And when any of the dam collapses, again it shows that vulnerability of that region. Second is about the natural disaster. As this Indian Himalayan region lies in the high seismic vulnerable zone, it is a zone 5 zone, high seismic zone. So the natural disasters are there like earthquakes, and there are other factors like this is a mountainous region, so orographic rainfall, and then which leads to the cloudburst, which leads to flash floods and land subsidence and landslides. So this shows the environmental vulnerability of this region. Next is biodiversity loss. Any construction happens over there, any infrastructural or the developmental project, any environmental issue or the disease leads to the biodiversity loss, habitation fragmentation, losses of species of flora and fauna. Maybe some endemic species got endangered over there. So these are some environmental vulnerabilities. Next is geopolitical sensitivity. What this geopolitical sensitivity? These Indian Himalayan region are in the border areas. So any conflict, any geopolitical tension in that area raises the risk of security, of the safety over that region. Next is the cultural heritage and identity. Due to changing migration pattern, due to changing environmental characteristics, people are migrating, people are not following their customs and traditions, which leads to the deplete of the culture, which leads to the cultural erosion. So the next is socio-economic vulnerabilities. So the livelihood of the people, they are dependent on the agriculture or due to some traditional activities, but due to climate change, due to other infrastructural development, maybe there are some rehabilitation, relocation. So there are losses of livelihood of the people over there also, and their limited dependency on some traditional activities, on some agriculture, and any issue on that traditional activities will leads to the hampering of their livelihoods. And also the limited infrastructure, this exacerbate their ability to handle the natural disaster, also the human disaster. So these are some socio-economic vulnerabilities. The main body part, that is the demand one, you can write about the challenges of the unregulated tourism in the IHR. So what are the reasons for that? What are the factors? What are the challenges? So again, you can divide your answer into environmental challenges, socio-cultural challenges and the economic challenges. So the very first is environmental challenge. How environmental challenge is there due to unregulated tourism? Unregulated tourism or uncontrolled tourism, when they got influxed into the Indian Himalayan region to fulfill their needs, like for their water needs, for their sanitation, for their food, for their living, we need to develop the infrastructure like dams, power projects, hotels, restaurants, etc. And for all these development of the infrastructure, we need to remove the forest. That leads to the deforestation. And when deforestation happens, it means the removal of the species of flora and fauna. It means biodiversity loss, habitat loss, biodiversity fragmentation or habitat fragmentation. So these are some challenges related to environment. The next is the solid waste generation. When the huge influx of the tourists goes to the Indian Himalayan region, the solid waste generation, the frequency and the intensity got increased. When connected with the inadequacy in the solid waste disposal also. So this exacerbate all the issues which leads to the soil pollution, which leads to the air pollution as well. Next is water deficiency due to climate change also, and due to more than the carrying capacity of that particular region. When the tourists got influxed over that region, there is a water deficiency. Then next comes the transportation. That transportation facilities, road, railways facilities are not there in much in Indian Himalayan region, but air transport, that increases the carbon footprints, which exacerbate the impacts of climate change. Next is increasing footfall on the glaciers. This leads to the more and more greenhouse gases emissions, and also increasing or fasting the pace of the glacier retreats. Next is about the socio-cultural aspects. Maybe the tourist which goes into the Indian Himalayan region, they do not know about, they are not aware, and maybe they do not respect the local traditions or the local custom. So this poses the challenges for the socio-cultural challenges over there. Then comes the economy. What are the economic challenges? Because of the lack of the proper regulations, maybe the benefits that can be reaped out of this tourism related activity, they will not get distributed equitably or equally in all the communities. So this leads to the economic disparities also. You can quote as many examples as you can. You can quote some Niti Aayog report also related to the how much tons of the solid waste be generated annually in this Indian Himalayan region. Finally, the conclusion, you can write about the impact, summary and some recommendation that via all this unregulated and uncontrolled tourism, we can see that what is the importance of the sustainable tourism. So for the sustainable tourism, we need some regulations and monitoring as well. First, we need to comprehend the carrying capacity of that particular region. So we should not allow others to go into that region. At least we can put some bars and rules and regulations for that. Along with that, we have to possess some stricter regulations with respect to the solid waste, with respect to the plastic waste, so as not to pollute that region, so as to maintain the sustainability of that region. So this was the answer. Let's see the model answer. Recent context setting, then specific vulnerabilities, then challenges, and finally the conclusion. So this was it for today. We are doing GS1 for December month. So this is a free initiative. Write 3 questions every day on our portal, that is this thing. And next you can see our videos and you can get the PDF from the description box. And also Vajiram and Ravi is starting the mains test intensive test series, which consists of 38 full length and half length tests. So do subscribe for that, for your comprehensive and holistic mains preparation for 2024. So that is it for my side. Thank you and have a nice day and keep writing.